It all started when my theory of relativity was proven to be correct. And that was in, well, does anybody know the year when that was proven correct? For that matter, what is the theory of relativity? Well, perhaps you know what the theory of special relativity is? You can explain to me what this is? I think you are a physicist. No. Well, it has to do with motion that is a uniform motion that does not accelerate or slow down or speed up, and it is in one direction. And I will not explain in detail the theory of special relativity for you, unless you have heard before and you wish to explain to me. It has to do with the relativity of time and space, yeah? And that we live in four-dimensional time, space, space, time. When the space expands, what happens to the time? It expands too. What's the matter with you? Wake up, people. But what it does not include the theory of special relativity. It did not include anything to say about gravity. What is gravity? And that is what I spent the next 10 years of my life trying to create a new theory of gravity. The old theory was created by a great British scientist. Perhaps you can recall his name. At the moment, I cannot. Yeah. What? Yeah, Isaac Newton. Yeah, he noticed, and I don't think for a moment this really happened, that he was at his mother's farm outside of London during the years of the plague, when the apple fell from the tree. And I don't think it hit him on the head. No, that is an old story, but he observed the apple on the moon, he put them together, and he come up with a theory that would explain why does the apple fall from the tree? Why does the moon go around the earth and not collide with the earth? And his theory of gravity, well, I suppose everybody here today knows, they think they know what gravity is. It is a mysterious force that pulls things towards the earth. Yeah? Would you agree with me? Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, you are wrong. I am sorry to disappoint you, but you are wrong. You see, my colleague said, do not challenge the great Isaac Newton, it will ruin your career. I don't care. I am only concerned with the truth, with what is true and beautiful and good. And my convictions led me on a different path to challenge Newton's concept of gravity. For him to be right, there must be a mysterious force that is traveling instantaneously through vast amounts of space, yeah? This force that is attractive force, here is the earth, and here is the moon, and they are attracting one and the other. Faster, instantaneously, it is faster than the speed of light. But Newton didn't know that the speed of light is absolute. Nothing can go faster than the speed of light. You see, a speed of light, for instance, in 1 second at the speed of light, you could travel around the earth 7.5 times. That's very, very fast. Yeah, very fast. But Newton thought it was instantaneous attraction. It would have to be faster than the speed of light. It is not possible. So what is it that we can explain the mysterious attraction between bodies, no matter how tiny they are or no matter how grand they are? That was my work. And I set out, I think it was in my theory of special relativity was published in 1905 when I'm 26 years old. And I am working at the patent office in Bern, Switzerland. I am a third-class patent expert, and it is a very good job. I don't mind. And when a physicist came to visit me, he was surprised to find that the person who has elaborated on the theory of special relativity is working in an office as a patent clerk. I said, come here, I will show you my my clinic, my study of advanced studies, it is right here, and I opened my drawer. And I showed him a bunch of notes that I had written. In 1907, I am still at the patent office, and I am sitting by myself one day, and it occurred to me an image. Often the images would come to me. I don't know where they come from, but they would invade my mental space. And what I imagined was somebody falling off the roof of a building. It was not me. Yeah, fortunately. And it occurred to me that the person falling would not experience his own weight. You see, he would be what? Weightless. Then I went a little further and I said, well, I can do this little thought experiment with you. We call in German a Gedanken experiment. And if you wish, you can use your imagination to picture yourself in an airplane. Yeah? And you are standing on a simple bathroom scale. And you are looking down at it. It is tied to your feet. And you see how much you weigh. Perhaps you are 102 pounds, whatever. But somebody shoves you out of the plane. Fortunately, you have a parachute on. And now, when you look at the scale on the weight, the scale, what do you see?
Zero.
Zero. You're weightless. But how do you explain that, this weightlessness? It was Galileo, the great 17th century Italian scientist. He was the one who first conceived of the theory of relativity, that all motion is relative, that you don't know you are moving except in relation to something else. Yeah, are you with me so far? Yeah. Yeah, so he also said that objects will fall at the same rate in a vacuum. So you can take a cannonball or a little feather and drop them in a vacuum, and they will accelerate at exactly the same rate. Yeah. Why is this? Well, he didn't know. Similarly, Newton could not explain gravity. He said, well, in the future somebody will come along. That somebody is me. If it does not have to do with a mysterious attraction, then what has it have to do with? Did he explain gravity? Now, I am on a little vacation with my wife, Mileva, and my children, when they are still small. We are in the Alps with Marie Curie. Perhaps you have heard of her, very famous scientist, and her husband, Pierre, and their children. I am not paying any attention at all to the wonderful scenery around me. What I am thinking of, I turn to my wife, Mileva, and I grab her by the arms. I said, what I need to know, Mileva, is what happens if I am in an elevator and the cable breaks. She said, Albert, you're crazy. Why can't you just put aside these obsessions and enjoy the wonderful scenery and the weather? But you see, this was one little step further on the theory of general relativity. What would happen in such an elevator? Can you imagine you are in the elevator? We do another Gedanken experiment, and perhaps you are holding an apple in your hand, and now this is when there are cables that are lifting up the elevator, okay, bringing them down, and the cable breaks. Now the elevator is plunging towards the bottom of the building. What happens to you? You are weightless, just as though you jumped out of the airplane. Now you are holding the apple and you drop it. What happens to the apple? Yeah? Does it fall to the ground?
No.
No. It is in free fall, just as you are in free fall. One time a student said to me, Professor Einstein, what if I am in the elevator and at the last moment to save my life, I jump up? What is wrong with that theory? Your feet would have to be on the floor of the elevator, but they are not. You are in free fall. So how can you jump up? Then I went a little bit further in my thought experiment. I put the elevator into outer space, yeah, as there are no windows. You cannot see out. Now you are being pulled up, you're accelerating at a certain speed. And as far as you know, you could be in a gravitational field. Because inside the elevator, you can do whatever you like, as if you was on the earth. As long as it is accelerating upward at a certain speed, your feet would be on the ground. The apple would be back in your hand. If you drop it, it would fall to the floor. Yeah? We can imagine that there is perhaps there is a pulley that is pulling the elevator up at a certain rate of acceleration. But if we broke that cable and it is plunging down, then again, you would be in a state of free fall. Well, this led me to my next discovery, that acceleration and gravity, they are equivalent. They are the same. That is what I call the principle of equivalence. You cannot tell the difference because your behavior will be the same if you are in a gravitational field or you are being accelerated at a certain speed. So why do we have to have gravity on the one hand and acceleration on the other? They are one and the same. So what is the secret of gravity then? What does it have to do with? And this led me to my next conclusion, or I would say perhaps insight. It has to do with the structure of space-time. It does not have to do with the mysterious force that is traveling through space one time, but rather the very geography of space-time itself. And I had to learn an entirely new branch of mathematics in order to devise the equations around my new conception of gravity. To this end, I turned to a student, a very good friend, who helped me when I was a student to pass my mathematics final exam, Marcel Grossman, and I learned something called tensor mathematics. It has to do with curved surfaces. Well, I devised a series of equations, and in 1915, over a period of, 4 weeks, I published a series of papers. When the last paper had the final equations that proved my theory, I believed, on what is gravity. And another student said to me, "Professor, what if it turns out you are wrong?" I said, "I will feel very sorry for God." Yeah. I know the theory is correct. But I published the papers. Now, one of the ideas that I published, I devised the equations that would explain the anomaly in the orbit of Mercury around the Sun. And I used the equations related to the relativity of gravity, the theory of relative gravity. I am losing my mind. General relativity, yeah? And this paper found its way out of Germany, and my colleague Max Planck shared the paper with who? With Sir Arthur Eddington in England. Now, what is going on in the world in 1915? The First World War. And the English are trying to prove that German scientists are ridiculous. And one of the worst ones is Einstein. Nothing he says you can believe. And the Germans are trying to convince everybody that Newton was baloney. Don't listen to him. Well, you know, Sir Arthur Eddington was a true man of science. He was concerned about the truth, what is good and beautiful and true. And when he read the paper on general relativity, he said, well, we must see if this person is correct or not. He wanted to test my theory. Now the war is going on. And in order to test, well, I should tell you that one of my tests would have to do with the bending of light from a distant star. If my theory is correct, and a beam of light comes close to the sun, on the gravitational field around the sun, the curvature of space-time around the sun, what will happen to the beam of light? It will bend, you see? Light is electromagnetism. Light is a form of energy. Energy and mass, they are the same, they are identical, they are different manifestations of one reality. What happens to mass must happen to energy. So the light must bend Well, can you imagine how hard it is to work out the equations to describe the bending of light? Yeah, well, the first time I worked it out, and it was a good thing it wasn't published because I forgot to take into account the curvature of space-time. But then I corrected, and that is what Eddington wanted to test. So he said, we're going to get money from the government, the British government. We're going to take 2 ships, and this happened, it was after the war. It ended in 1918, when there was an armistice, yeah. And one ship would go to Brazil, the other to West Africa, and during a total eclipse, they would take photographs of a distant star, and then they would measure the bending of the light beam. What was it like before the eclipse, and how do you perceive it during the eclipse? That is when the ships were down. They took photographs, 1919, and it took about 6 months to analyze the results. In November 1919, in London, the representatives of different scientific bodies got together, and the chairman, I wasn't there, I was busy at home. The chairman rose up and said, "This is the greatest achievement in human thought since Isaac Newton, and the greatest insight into the nature of gravity. My theory was correct. The light bent, and I predicted how much it would bend, and it was completely accurate."
Wow.
Yeah. This was one more proof of the theory of general relativity. Yeah. And I don't know how it happened, but the next day, the major newspapers around the world, the headlines were applauding me. They say this 40-year-old shaggy-headed Swiss-German scientist said that light would bend, and he was correct, and so on. The greatest achievement since Sir Isaac Newton. Well, overnight I became a big shot, and my life was never the same. I'm only 40 years old, and I don't know, would you like to hear a little bit about how it affected me?
Yeah.
I was laboring in relative obscurity, so I was respected by my colleagues. But now, with this confirmation of my theory of general relativity, I became what you call a celebrity. And ordinary people, I was living at the time in Berlin with my wife, not my first wife, later. We was divorced in 1918 or 19, and I married my first cousin Elsa, and I adopted her 2 children, grown children by then, Ilse and Margot. Yeah. So what am I telling you? Oh yeah. So people, they wish to treat me like I am a prophet. A wizened sage. They are lining up outside on the streets, outside of my apartment. They wanted to see me, to talk with me. I recall one person said, "I am the successor of Jesus Christ." And I wish to have a private conversation with you, Einstein. I got a letter from another admirer who wanted to come to Berlin to wash my feet. Yeah, it was crazy at the time. I would have to sneak out of the back of the building with the disguise on, just so I could have a little privacy in my life. Yeah, and it was not, yeah, that was it. So there was a benefit, and also there was what do you call the negative to this certain notoriety that I was enjoying. My apartment that I shared with Elsa became something of a mecca for people. Artists and writers and philosophers would come, and sometimes I'm walking in my own apartment and I feel like a complete stranger. What am I doing here? What has become of my life? Yeah, I always wanted to live a very simple life, and I didn't want all this applause. 1921, 2 years later, I am invited by Chaim Weizmann. He was the president of the World Zionist Organization. He did not directly, well, he sent a telegram, and it was intercepted by Max Planck, I believe, who came to my apartment in Berlin. He said, "Albert, Chaim Weizmann wishes you to accompany him on a fundraising tour in America. They're going to raise money for the Hebrew University in Palestine. Yeah. This sounded like a noble cause, but I didn't want to go. I had my own work to do, so I said no. But then he read the telegram again, and I thought, well, I am a Jew, and I have a certain obligation to other Jews, so tell him I will accompany him. So 1921 we sail, and we go across the ocean to New York Harbor to begin the fundraising tour in America. That was my first time to this country. With Elsa, my wife, and Chaim Weizmann and other members of the World Zionist Organization. I speak almost no English at the time, and I recall when the boat comes into the harbor, yeah, there are all of these reporters with the cameras, with the big lights. They are flashing the lights. They come on board the ship. They are surrounding me, and they are asking me all of these questions. And the person who is translating is telling me what the questions are. Professor Einstein, how far away is the moon? What is the speed of sound? How far away? I said, I don't know. Tell these people. I am not a traveling library. If you are interested in the answers, go to the library yourself and look up the answers. I don't carry this information in my head. Well, and then everything I did, it became front page news. I wanted to have vanilla ice cream with the chocolate sprinkles. I hear about it, I read about it, but I don't get it until I come to New York, and it was a big deal for me, and apparently a big deal for the whole world. I bought a comb in a little store. That front page news. Professor Einstein buys comb. Well, when we first arrived in New York in 1921, we are in a motorcade. We are traveling through the streets of Manhattan, and there is no roof on the car with myself and Chaim and Elsa, and there are throngs of people along the sidewalks, and they're all cheering, Einstein, Einstein, Einstein. This is what it means to be a big shot. And we went to the hotel Waldorf Astoria, and that's where we stayed. And then we began the fundraising. And was it successful? I don't know. We didn't raise that much money. We didn't raise all the amount that Chaim Weizmann wanted to raise. So we would travel, we would come to Boston, and we went to Chicago, and back to New York. We raised a substantial amount of money, and I would give a lecture on the theory of relativity, general and special, and other theories that I was interested in. And then we returned to Germany. Well, there is much turmoil that is happening in Germany at that time. I don't know, would you like to hear a little bit about that?
Tell us.
Yeah, well, perhaps I will tell you a little, but maybe I will have a little water, yeah. Yeah, I could offer you water, but you can help yourself. Yeah. Oh. You know, when the war ended in 1918, Germany signed the Treaty of Versailles that imposed very difficult conditions on Germany. And many Germans believe that those people who signed the treaty were traitors to the national identity of the German people, and that it caused immense poverty and